Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's stream. My name is Ariana. I am the co director of the Consent Academy, an international, Seattle based educational collective and nonprofit that aims to promote consent as part of everyday life. And I am super happy to be here today and hang out with you all. Hi, Jakey, Aradin, Paladin Hulk. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Today we're going to talk about a little bit of moving through conflict. Oh, thank you, Aradin, for the resubscription for 12 months. That's amazing. Thank you. And I did get a notification we got a follower earlier. I heard the little bing, but I didn't remember the name. So whoever followed right before the stream started, thank you. Anyway, what was I going to say? Right. So we're going to be talking today about what to do when you've fucked up consent, when you've made a big mistake. And we're going to talk about moving through some conflict, some tools for that, and looking at some fun scenarios. Paladin, like you said, I have already read the thing, and wow, this poor guy and this poor boss too. Yeah, this one I saw a little while ago, definitely more than 18 hours ago. Let me refresh because I think it's older than that. And I've been saving it for days. Yeah, 5 days ago. I've been saving it for days because I read this one and I was like, oof, like I can feel this one. And yeah, so I'll place this in the chat. As always, with these, if you want to comment on them, especially to talk about things from a consent focused lens, please do so. Also, it did just occur to me that if you ever want to, I don't want to go in and do it because they tend to Reddit tends to ban you for doing that. But if anyone ever wants to comment that we talked about these things on there, because people might want to see what did we say, that could be fun. And link to the video or whatever. But I can't do it because I know Reddit would just be like, ban. That happened to me once with the Am I the Asshole subreddit. I got super upvoted and I thought I was on Imager, and I did a front page edit like you do on Imager, and I was like, oh yeah, check out this Twitch stream I do, and they were just 6-month ban. Okay, all right, I didn't even know. First comment I ever wrote on Reddit, and I'm getting banned. There was no code of conduct that said that anywhere. I looked. Okay, anyway, digression aside, let's read this situation out. So, this is today I fucked up by accidentally inviting my boss to my getaway weekend or weekend getaway. So, the second I saw this, I felt this because I've had similar mistakes that I've made. I once, when I was a college student, I worked for my university's IT support, and we used IRC, which is a instant message group chat kind of thing, older technology. And I would send my friends pictures and funny jokes and memes, and I didn't realize it, but I had accidentally been sending them to my boss and talking to my boss as though it was my friend Josh. And it was about an hour and a half in, and I realized I sent something that was maybe quasi not safe for work. It was just a picture of a guy wearing a really cute dress and bonnet and stuff. And I was just talking with with my friend about how I liked this fashion and I thought it looked really good. And then I just realized an hour and a half in that I had been talking to my boss the whole time. And that is by far the most embarrassing moment of my life. Not necessarily the moment I should be the most embarrassed of. I've done many things that probably merit much more embarrassment. But as I've mentioned before, I don't really experience shame, I feel, the way most people do. So I don't get ashamed or embarrassed of a lot of things. But anyway, I wanted to just evaporate. I just felt myself going oh my God. But my boss was actually chill with it. And I was like, all right, okay. Wasn't too weird, but definitely was not appropriate. Anyway, I have accidentally looped people into things that I did not mean to do. It's complicated. Hi, Whistler. Um, Arad, and you say, yeah, the whole quote unwritten rules thing about Reddit is one of the reasons I hate the site. Yeah, I mean, I learned, and it's fine. Okay, so let's read this out loud. And yeah, some bosses are people too. Uh, it was more just like the fact that I didn't realize that I had done that, and my like fear that I may have said things that were not appropriate to say to my boss. Um, Yeah, exactly, Aradin. Talk about jumping a couple of those friendship levels with your boss. Absolutely. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, in the Tuesday streams, we've been reading a book called Friendship Processes and looking at research and theories around how to make friends and sort of like how to actually develop friendship, like what's the science of it. And there's like levels. And one of the things that can kill romantic or platonic relationships is trying to like move through the levels too quickly if both people aren't wanting to do it together. If it's like if you say I love you on like the first date, it's going to scare a bunch of people off. Okay, so let's read this. So I had been planning this weekend getaway with my buddies for months. We were going to a remote cabin in the woods to have some fun, drink some beers, and forget about work for a while. As the weekend approached, I was excited to finally take a break from my stressful job and just let loose. But here's where I messed up. I accidentally included my boss in the group message about the weekend getaway. I didn't realize until I saw his response in the chat saying he was excited to join us. I immediately panicked because, let's be real, nobody wants to spend a weekend away with their boss. I tried to backtrack and come up with some excuse, but it was too late. My boss had already made plans to come with us, and there was no way out of it. So I spent the whole weekend trying to have fun while also keeping a professional demeanor around my boss. It was the most awkward and uncomfortable weekend of my life. Too long didn't read, planned a weekend getaway with my friends, accidentally included boss in group message, couldn't back out, spent a weekend awkwardly balancing fun and professionalism. And I'm excited to look at the edit. Um, Whistler, is the friendship development from the books or is it from other sources? We're looking at multiple sources and multiple theories of like the stages of friendship development. But a lot of the different theories really overlap in what they say, which is basically that there are maybe 5 to 7 different like stages. And if you kind of move through some of them too quickly, it can be weird. Almost always it's people start as like context dependent interactions, like I'm friendly with the people who live in my apartment building when we see each other in the stairwells, or if we run into each other on the street, or my coworkers or like classmates. And then there's like friendly relations, and then there's nascent friendship and moving towards friendship, etc. Like there's these different levels, and then there's like stabilized friendship. And then there can be other levels about like decline and repair and stuff. And the book is really good. I like genuinely recommend it. I've just been using the Google Book preview on the stream, but I'm trying to actually get a full copy of the book because I really want to read the whole thing. Okay, anyway, let's talk about this post. So this is tough because this is both fundamentally a couple of different things happening simultaneously that made this harder. The first one is there was a communication breakdown, clearly. The boss didn't realize, it seems, that they were accidentally included. Now, maybe the boss should have realized it was not likely to have been intentional, given, especially if nobody else from work was included, and especially if this employee and that boss don't have that kind of relationship, if they don't connect with each other in those ways. However, not everybody is that aware of things. And also, this person could be like desperately lonely and just be like, I need some human contact, so I'm just going to jump on it. Which doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a consent incident, but it means that when you're in any kind of heightened emotional state, the risk of consent going wrong goes way up. So if I'm like desperately lonely, I'm a lot more likely to agree to things, to participate in things, etc., that I might not normally do. um, because of my loneliness, because of my desire to not be so lonely. So anyway, um, it sucks too because the boss clearly took time off or like made plans, arranged things, so it's kind of hard to back out of it. However, it's also tough, as this person says, because they had to balance this relationship. You don't want to be too much you're like not in work self with your boss. Maybe you can have over time with getting to know your boss, but at first it's risky, right? It just genuinely could be risky to your career, especially if you act quite different or you would do things in your free time that you might be judged for, especially professionally. If I enjoyed, you know, certain types of activities or that may not be considered very socially acceptable in the mainstream, or like made certain types of jokes or like to do drugs or something like that, that could be really difficult for my work. So that's tough. And one of the things that could have really helped with this is instead of just, okay, there's a couple of things. He could have set a hard boundary with the guy and just been like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I did not realize I had included you in this chat. I did not mean to invite you. Please don't come. It would be really difficult for me because I want to be able to like really get away from work. Now, that also comes with risk. The boss might not take it very well, but it also can make you seem kind of like an asshole. There's a lot of ways that this could go. So he could set that boundary, but he would be well within his right to, and just say, like, you're always allowed to say no to people, even if it's not the nicest thing to do, right? It's not about being nice. It's about, are you actually consenting to this? Are you doing it with feeling? And clearly this person wasn't. However, not every situation where consent is not going perfectly is bad, is a problem, or can't produce positive things in the long run. This is not me saying that like all the bad faith uses of this idea are valid. I'm more talking about like the difference between getting outside of your comfort zone and getting outside of your boundaries. And sometimes we get outside of our comfort zone and we grow a lot, but we're still in our like window of tolerance for difficulty, stress, mental load, whatever. And then sometimes getting out of our boundaries can be a thing that also is beneficial to us in the long run, right? Like I've gotten way in over my head in many situations in life, and they've really helped me grow as a person. And I've had other times where I was even within my boundaries and it went wrong. Okay, so you could set that boundary, but one of the other things that you could do in this kind of situation, especially if you want to maintain this relationship, is talk with your boss about how are we going to relate to each other during this weekend. There is a power differential here between this person and their boss that cannot be overcome simply by acknowledging that it exists, but you can help offset some of the impact by having very frank, very upfront conversations about the awkwardness of it, the balancing tensions, and also figuring out how do we want to navigate this. And that would be a perfectly reasonable conversation to have here. So I want to take this a moment to come to a point that I really want to stress for today, which is that in any interpersonal situation, there are like three main goals that we can have. So I'm going to write this down. The goals, oh wow, that's tiny. That's tiny. I'm going to make this way bigger. 200% is as big as I can get it. The goals of any interpersonal situation. You have three possible. You have one, maintaining the relationship. And that's what is probably the biggest goal in this scenario. The next is getting, we'll say maintaining self-respect. Self-respect, and then getting what you want. Now, for the most part, these three things usually exist in harmony. There's not, in most of the interactions that we have, or yeah, Paladin, the goal is to win. For some people, winning is the same as maintaining self respect, but it's often very much at the expense of maintaining the relationship, especially in the long term. Um, but yeah, good point. So then, you know, all of these goals are always present, right? A lot of the time they're in harmony. Every once in a while, we're going to have to sacrifice one or two to get one of the others. So, in any interpersonal situation, we always want to think about, what is my priority here? Is my priority to feel good about how I acted in this situation? Is my priority to make sure I respected my boundaries regardless of the cost? Or is my goal to make sure that I get something else that I want? Like, I want this person to give me this thing. I want this person to agree to this thing. Or is my goal to maintain the relationship even if I have to set aside some of my self respect? If this sounds weird to you, I promise you, you do this almost every day at work. Probably almost every day at work, you set aside a little bit of your self respect and probably getting what you want in order to maintain the relationship to your job and or to keep your job. And sometimes we can want multiple things in a situation. The goal 3 can be sometimes the most complicated, because sometimes we might want more than one thing. And that can be really hard, especially if those things are in tension with each other. I might want to relax away from my work, and I might also want my boss to not hate me, and I might also want to keep my job. And balancing all of those things is going to be tough. So then here also, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem if these things exist in tension. It can be, but it's not inherently a problem. This is what the cost of having autonomy is. We have autonomy, the fundamental right to decide what is best for us, our mind, our body, our spirit, our story, our information, our personal property, etc. But that means that there's many points in time where we're going to need to negotiate, even within ourselves. This is part of the territory that comes with having autonomy. So, oh, nice, Aradin. I'm glad you got a float. So let's go back to this scenario here. So I would imagine if I were in this scenario, my main goal would probably be maintaining the relationship with my boss and my buddies. My buddies are probably pissed that I invited my boss by accident, right? Because it probably means that if my buddies are good friends, they're probably going to act a little bit differently because they don't want me to lose my job, right? If I had a friend, or if I were dating someone and they like acted really inappropriately in front of my boss or in front of my parents or something like that, I would honestly be kind of pissed off at them because they would not need to be there to deal with the fallout. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to deal with disrespect. If I knew somebody, like my boss came in and was like being really bigoted, yeah, my friend has every right to push back against that. I would push back against that too. However, oftentimes things can go really wrong because people can, they don't have to deal with the negative consequences of something, can forget that they still need to maintain the relationship with the person who is going to have to deal with those negative consequences. I hope this makes sense. Also, is the stream okay? It says I'm getting 60 frames per second, but it went red, from green to red. So I just want to make sure everything's okay. It says 0 dropped frames. Sounds like everything's okay. Okay. All right. So my friends would probably need to be careful about their behavior because they don't want me to lose my job. And I need to maintain my relationship with my friends. I need to maintain my relationship with my boss. I also want to relax. And I also want to respect myself. So there's a lot of things in tension here. All right. So, people's responses were things like this. Unless you happen to be in a workplace where everybody is already pretty friendly and hang out regularly after work hours, it seems kind of strange that your boss would accept the invitation in the first place. Maybe he's just a bit lonely and was glad to be included in something. Consider it your good deed for the month. And I definitely agree. It is kind of strange that the boss would accept the invitation in the first place. And then this person replied, the Michael Scott complex. And if you don't know who that is, it's the boss from the show The Office. Hi, Tammy Kitten. Thank you for letting me know. Michael Scott complex in bosses is pretty common. To be frank, where they struggle with the isolation of being the boss and just want to be friends with people at work. And I would also say that this is pretty true. And another person replied, it kind of hurts, to be honest. I'm the lowest level of manager, but as long-term employees get promoted out and new ones come in, they're slowly less friendly with me and have started seeing me only as their boss and not their friend. I'm not even their boss. I just make decisions when the boss isn't around. Yeah, so it's these are difficult things. Oh, thank you for the follow, regular Jay. So this is tough, right? Like if you're in this position, these things are conflicts, but I would say generally speaking, I agree with this first person's comment. Unless this is already the culture of your workplace, it is a little weird. The boss still came though. So again, what I would do here is have a conversation with the boss before the weekend. As if I couldn't get them to back out, it was too late, I would sit down with them and just say, okay, we're going to go on this trip together. Let's talk about how we want to interact with each other. Obviously, you're not going to be able to completely unwind because even if your boss says, yeah, like totally just be yourself, there's always limits to that, right? Like there would still be a limit to how much just being yourself, because your boss is going to have a different mental model of what being yourself means than probably is the reality of you, right? And this is also a great example of issues with informed consent. If we have different ideas about the same thing, we might not even realize that we're miscommunicating. So I want to see what this person said was the result of the weekend. So I'm going to go look at the update. Let me see here. Where is the update? Where is the update? Oh wait, yeah, this. Okay. Sorry, it was the first one. I just missed it. Okay, this person said, update. I never expected my last post about accidentally inviting my boss to my weekend getaway to blow up like that. Thank you so much for all the comments and messages. And for those who asked for an update, here it is. And for some who did not understand, the weekend already happened. First thing first, it was just as awkward as you can imagine. I spent the entire weekend trying to have fun with my friends while also trying to impress my boss. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying not to say or do anything that would make me look bad in front of him. But despite the awkwardness, we did have some fun moments. We went fishing, we played board games, and we even went on a hike in the woods. I tried my best to act normal around my boss, but I could tell he was a bit uncomfortable too. At one point, my buddy brought out a case of beer and we all started drinking. My boss joined in too, and before we knew it, we were all pretty drunk. That's when things started to really get really awkward. Now, this is something that's very interesting to me because especially having lived and worked in Japan, there's a very strong culture of you go out with your coworkers, including your boss, and you all get drunk together. And that's like part of the bonding and part of the like ways to reinforce, like a sense of belonging at your job, a sense of identity at your job, etc. But it's very, very normal for everybody to drink together. Whistler said, I could totally see an alternate version of this story where the boss is agonizing over whether they should accept and whether it was their duty to support their employee and not be rude. 100%, exactly. And this is one of the things that can make it really tough. Again, though, this is a great example. I like your thought, Whistler, of one of these principles of consent that we really advocate for at Consent Academy, which is anytime you have doubt, if you don't feel 100% sure that things are totally consensual, you should slow down and try to get more information. And so that's something the boss could have done, which is just say, like, hey, I really appreciate this invite, but I just wanted to check, did you mean to invite me? I didn't see anybody else from work in the chat, so I just wanted to make sure that you actually wanted to invite me. That would be a very reasonable thing to say as well. Okay, one of my friends, let's call him Dave, started telling some inappropriate jokes. I knew I should have told him to stop, but I was too afraid of offending my boss. So I just sat there trying to laugh politely while Dave told joke after joke. Then, to make things worse, my boss started telling his own inappropriate jokes. I couldn't believe it. This was my boss, the guy who signs my paychecks, telling dirty jokes in the middle of the woods. The rest of my weekend was pretty uneventful. We all went to bed early each night, and I made sure to keep my distance from my boss. I could tell he was relieved to go back to work on Monday, and so was I. Overall, it was a pretty stressful and awkward weekend, but at least I learned a valuable lesson. Always double check who you're inviting before you hit send, and maybe, just maybe, don't invite your boss to your weekend getaway in the first place. Hi, Aussie. Welcome for joining. Or thank you for joining. Welcome. Kind of mix the two together. Anyway, this is a situation where the stakes were not totally low. This could have really ended with a lot more disaster and conflict. And this is definitely not the best consent practices. And also an example of how we can get through things a lot of the time. And by trying to balance our behavior, and they're kind of checking in with each other, right? They're kind of like feeling for indirectly, is this person, oh, Paladin Hulk, no. The lesson is always film your boss telling inappropriate jokes. I mean, there's that too. You could do that, but that would maybe not be the most consensual thing. That being said, it's tough. It's really tough. I think what would have really helped is the boss slowing down and checking in. Did you really mean to invite me? And then if it didn't happen, just slowing down and being like, okay, let's talk about how we want to make this weekend not awkward. Yeah, Aussie blackmail is kind of illegal. Yeah. So I think this is all in all a pretty fun story, interesting. And I would agree with this person. Hey, mate, the fact that your boss cracked inappropriate jokes is a good sign. It means there is a degree of trust between you. My previous job, my boss was my best mate. Seriously, couldn't ask for more. Yes, we had our serious moments, typically where I got a bollocking because I forgot to do something big, but we also had our far less serious moments, sitting in a control room at 10 p.m., laughing our asses off at something seriously not worth the laughter. So yeah, I think that it is possible. The power dynamic though, and the difference does always need to be acknowledged. It needs to be acknowledged that your boss can get you fired, and that on some level, even when you're really good friends with your boss, there's still some level of performance. Okay, so I think we talked about this one, how we could deal with it. And just to review, in general, in any interpersonal situation, there are 3 main goals we can have: maintaining the relationship, maintaining self-respect, and getting what you want. So as we continue to look through some situations, let's think about which one is possibly going on here. All right, so this next one is a little different. This is from the relationship advice subreddit. I'll paste it into the chat. So it says, my boyfriend says I'm killing the vibe over a serious topic. Now I picked this one because people often talk about consent that way, where they're like, oh, you're going to kill the vibe. If we slow down and focus on consent too much, it doesn't feel dangerous. It doesn't feel adventurous. It doesn't feel this or that or this or that. And Aradin, the inappropriate jokes in that situation, I would imagine were sex jokes, like dirty jokes. I think they said dirty jokes, so I'm going to just assume it was sex jokes. Anyway, okay. So the thing is, though, whenever somebody says that you're killing the vibe, and I don't want to make a universal statement here because there's so many different types of situations where someone might use that language. But if it's a serious topic, sometimes it's okay for the vibe to be killed a little bit because you want to really make sure that you're on the same page. It's just like Charlie and I, my partner, we started dating when we both lived in Japan. And it was kind of long distance. We were several hours drive apart from each other. But then I moved to France and Charlie was still in Japan. And then Charlie moved to Seattle and I was still in France. And we had a long distance relationship for several years that way. And we needed to not be like super coy and demure with each other about a lot of things because anytime we wanted to see each other in person, that was potentially thousands of dollars in plane tickets. We really had to make sure we were on the same page about how we wanted to develop this relationship. Before I moved to Seattle to be with him, we had to really make sure we were both okay with what that move represented. It represented me moving away from a certain life path that I'd set myself up for to choose a different life path. That's a big deal. But we decided we wanted to do that. And before I proposed to Charlie, we more or less talked through things that I had wanted to propose earlier, about 6 months previous. And Charlie gently and slightly indirectly, but also very clearly told me it was a little too soon, that they wanted a bit more time before they wanted us to have lived together for at least a whole year before that happened. And I was just like, okay, but I wanted to marry you from like the first date. So, all right, I can wait a little bit longer. And it wasn't always the most romantic, the smoothest, but I tell people all the time, like building that foundation of being able to have slightly stressful, maybe slightly difficult, maybe like not the most romantic, but incredibly important conversations clearly and unambiguously has helped our relationship tremendously. It set a foundation of open and honest communication, us both really listening to each other for understanding. And that comes back to this point here. Maintaining the relationship is something people often forget as a goal. Not if you're doing a lot of people pleasing. Like people pleasing, we could say in some ways is a mixture of maintaining the relationship and getting what you want, usually a sense of safety or belonging. But a lot of the times people get really focused on, in a disagreement, in a stressful conversation, in an argument, on winning or feeling like they're right or wanting to just be heard more than anything or whatever. There's all these different goals, and forget that often the goal, especially in life partnership style relationships, that should be how do we have the happiest, most supportive and sustainable relationship possible. And this is one of the reasons why Charlie and I might disagree. We've maybe bickered like 2 or 3 times in our entire life with each other. And that was like very small moments. And like as soon as we recognized we had bickered, we like stopped and checked in with each other. And we were just like, yo, what was this about? And it was usually just because we were under like a lot of stress or we were around other couples that were bickering a lot. And it was kind of like getting us worked up. But we don't fight. Now, some people have this belief that if you don't fight, that means there's something wrong in the relationship. And I think that's one of those phrases that people take too far, just like relationships take work. I used to believe that relationships take work meant they should feel kind of like shit. What relationships take work means is they require investment. When people say there's something wrong if you never fight, what they're actually saying is if nobody's ever actually willing to set boundaries with each other, if you're never willing to actually say what it is you want, and even if it leads to disagreement, and you're not willing to work through that disagreement, if you avoid conflict at all costs all the time, that's likely to build up resentment and not be a sustainable relationship. So a lot of the time, if your goal is maintaining the relationship, you should ask yourself, all parties involved should be asking this, how should I act in order to have the happiest, most supportive and sustainable relationship possible with this person? And how should I act if I remember that that is my goal? We're often going to be way different in our behavior If I'm thinking of that as my goal versus my goal is to feel like I won. My goal is to be right. My goal is to make sure I said everything I felt like I needed to say. Especially with that last one, it gets really stressful because sometimes people can end up wanting to like rehash old arguments that they had either from their childhood, with their parents, with their siblings, with an ex of theirs. And there's often a question that comes up of who do you really want to say this to? Is this argument a stand in? My ex husband, sometimes we would argue, and he would literally call me mom and then start arguing back to me about things that I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. He was literally like rehashing arguments he'd had with his mom as a kid about like what was for dinner or whatever. And it's one of the main reasons why our relationship didn't work out. But like, it was a very clear example of I was not often the person he actually had a problem with. It was these unresolved conflicts he had with his mom. Anyway, Paladin Hulk, you said, or Aradin, you said, and it ended up leading to you starting your streaming for us. So thank you, Charlie. Yeah. Paladin Hulk, relationships should feel like a job, a place where your labor is exploited. I don't think that's the right way to do interpersonal relationships, for sure. Rod, and I wonder if people say that is partly due to being in relationships where they fight all the time, and so they assume that it is a default as it makes them feel better. I also think there's some of that too. All right, so let's go back to the scenario here. So it says, hello, everyone. I'm seeking the best advice for my situation. So I spoke to my boyfriend about marriage yesterday. This topic did not go well. I asked him, and this is a 28-year-old woman and a 34-year-old man. So an age group that I think is perfectly reasonable for them to want to have frank discussions of, is this going to lead to marriage or not? I asked him, did he see himself getting married in the future? He said, yeah, if the right woman comes along. So this is just reading this line, dump them, dump this person. I know it's a controversial book, and I don't love everything that it says, but the book, He's Not That Into You, has for everybody, regardless of gender, regardless of who you date, I do think actually good advice. If you ask somebody, yeah, if the right woman, would you ever see yourself getting married? And they don't say something, if they say something like this, they're not that into you. I mean, if they've been dating for like a couple of months, sure. But if you've been dating for a little while, it's one of those things that's also like, say this person is into this person enough, but they're not ready to like talk about marriage, that's fine. They can say, like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. Oh, thank you for the follow. No username. I can't see username. Uh, it's okay to like not be ready to talk about this. You can just say, like, wow, this is a really big topic and I take it really seriously. I just don't feel ready to talk about this yet. That does not mean I'm not interested in you. That means this is giving me a lot of feelings and I'm not quite ready for this conversation. Yeah, let's continue to read. So this immediately made me feel some type of way. I asked him, am I not the right woman? His answer was, I don't know. So that made me feel even more concerned. If he doesn't think I'm the right woman, then why is he with me? So the conversation continued, and he said that I'm killing the vibe. I asked how. He said, because we were at a good place right now in our relationship, and bringing up marriage is negative. So again, like, yeah, I would just say, like, probably stop dating this person and find someone who's into you enough. Because if someone's really into you, unless they have like big philosophical qualms with the institution of marriage, like there are plenty of reasons to like want to get up on your soapbox and talk about how like the institution of marriage is oppressive and terrible and we shouldn't do it. That's totally fine. Like that's fine. That's not what we're talking about here. If I'm really into somebody, I will talk about wanting to get married to them on like the first date. Charlie and I more or less talked about these things on our first couple of dates. It was very tender, it was very like indirect, but it was never like, this is killing the vibe. Why would you bring that up? I would assume that they've been dating for more than, a non zero amount of time. And like, if this person's feeling it, how do I want to say this? Being in love, being in lust, being in these like excited places romantically tend to make people more impulsive and tend to make people want to talk about things that is like way too early to talk about. And so if there's none of that going on, I don't know, it seems like a pretty big red flag to me. And if this person really wants to get married and is like, this is one of the things that happens. There's lots of people who they really want to get married. It's like a goal that they have, and it's a perfectly reasonable goal. We have instincts towards love. Like it's considered to be that like falling in love and finding people to love is one of our instincts, generally speaking. Not everybody has it. Not everybody has it to the same degree, but it's considered to be an instinct. So it's a perfectly reasonable, and even if it weren't an instinct, it's a perfectly reasonable thing to want to have. Life partnership is great in many ways, especially if it's a good relationship. People have a bias against women as they get older. A lot of people believe that any woman who's over 26 and not married is a huge red flag. Now, obviously, you probably don't want to marry those kinds of people, but that bias is out there. Exactly, Whistler. I think being inconvenienced is also a thing in addition to being in love and lust. So this is one of those things where it's like, if you want to get married, if you want life partnership, you you don't need to like waste your time in a relationship that doesn't feel great in general. Even if you don't want to get married, like you don't necessarily need to be inconvenienced with somebody. People can both decide that that's what they want. Like there can be plenty of cases where that's a perfectly reasonable decision for the two people to make together. But it doesn't sound like this would be someone this person could actually talk about that with. And yeah, I don't know. Okay. And it's the idea of marriage is negative, and they're not getting up on a soapbox to talk about like the institution of marriage being oppressive. Sus. I feel sus. Okay. It brings down our relationship specifically since we are doing good, is what he said. The conversation ended because we both got annoyed. I've had time to think about it, and my first reaction was to end the relationship, but I'm trying to seek advice to make sure that is the right decision or if I'm just overreacting. So this is one of those things where it's like you can move through conflict here, right? If this is the guy is just like kind of freaked out about the topic, marriage makes him feel like he's getting really old and he's like existential dread is overwhelming him. There are many things that could be perfectly reasonable, not indicating that he's not that into this person, reasons for wanting to avoid this topic. But she can't know any of that if that's not communicated. So that's one of the next big things. When it comes to maintaining relationships and moving through conflict, you got to share information. So to move through conflict, you got to share information. If I don't know why you are doing something, I can't respond appropriately. Same goes if I don't know why I'm doing something, right? Like this is a big deal. We actually have to communicate to each other. If you want a connection to last, you have to get past being afraid to say what you really think, feel, want, etc. You got to get past it. All right, let's see what you else are saying in the chat. Aradin, this is someone that just wants to sleep with you without worrying about anything else. Possibly. Yeah. Also, I know it's pedantic, but the I'm seeking the best advice makes me laugh and makes me want to apply. Well, it is good that you specified the best advice. Otherwise, yeah, I know exactly. I had the same exact thought, Aradin. And Paladin Hulk, he just enjoys dating her for now, taking it day by day. And it's reasonable to want to take it day by day. It's totally reasonable. But this person deserves to know that that's how you want to take it. You've got to actually communicate that. It can be tough because if you're really hearing, oh, this person actually hates me secretly, they don't want to be with me, I'm going to just waste my time, this is a huge, like, I'm going to be so sad later, you could be getting yourself really worked up with these thoughts and not really able to hear it. But it's, this person has to want to communicate with their girlfriend. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what other people are saying. So, okay, this one makes me sad. This top comment. After 10 years and multiple conversations about marriage and kids, my partner told me he didn't see me as his wife in the future. I ended it. I'm now engaged to a man who literally could not stop asking to marry me. And I'm as crazy about him. Don't fall for a sunk cost fallacy. You might have your real soulmate out there just waiting to lock you down. Haha. So I don't really believe in soulmates, and I don't like the idea of like the one, because one, that just like statistically doesn't make very much sense, but also like there are many different people anybody could be compatible with, and any number of relationship constellations that could work, especially if the people involved want it to work. All right. So, yeah, dump the guy who doesn't think of you as the right woman. This way, it will give you more time to find the guy who does think you are. This next person says, life happens. We bought a house together. He got injured at work, needed surgeries. When it's also your best friend, it's hard to leave them in a shit place. Still amicable and don't regret my time with him, but I do hope you find that too. Edit. I'm 31 now, so you still have time to find it. Haha. And then the OP replied, I see. Well, I'm a newbie to anything like that. Building with someone and being with them that long, I couldn't imagine. Yeah. So I'm still curious about how long have they actually been dated? Or not dated, dating? That's, let's see if this person says at any point how long they've been dated. Okay, so first we started dating for about 6 to 7 months, and it didn't work out, so we decided to break up for a year. Then we got back together last October. So they've dated for almost a year total. Yeah, so yeah, I would still agree with this person. How many times does this man have to tell you he doesn't want you for you to get it? I would just, my advice to this person is, I'm going to actually reply to this one, is read the book He's Not That Into You, because this guy doesn't sound like he's that into you. I think that's basically, yeah, I'm just going to write that. I would recommend reading the book He's Not That Into You. There are many reasons why your guy might be stressed to talk about marriage. Some of them are about some of them are things that can change with time, and some of them are strong signals. Signals. Oh, thank you, Glitter Kitten, for the follow. Strong signals about how he feels. You'll have to talk through it with him to know which it is, but make sure you maintain your self-respect throughout the process. I think this is about what I would say. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is also from relationship advice. This one's a less intense one. How do I, a 39-year-old man, kindly and lovingly talk to my partner, a 34-year-old woman, about an inappropriate birthday gift? So I'll paste this one into the chat. Oh yeah, Rod and I see you said. Also, it is one of those things that keeps people in relationships they should probably leave as, but they are my soulmate. If I leave them, I won't find someone else. Or, but what if they are my soulmate? And this is one of the things is like, if soulmates exist, it shouldn't feel like shit to meet them, right? It shouldn't be like, I don't know. I feel like if a soulmate exists, it's more the toxic, like love at first sight, everything was immediately perfect and perfect forever kind of deal than like uncertainty and stress and difficulty. Anyway, let's read this one. So, how do I lovingly and kindly talk to my partner about an inappropriate birthday gift? I actually have very particular advice for this. I'm going to come over here. Not the systems thinking thing, but I'm going to talk about, if you're unaware, this is from our upcoming accountability pods class. And this is the tool I would recommend, which is a modification of either from applied psychology, what we could call nonviolent communication, or from clinical psychology, interpersonal effectiveness. I kind of rewrote it to be more useful in daily life and boundary setting. And so this is what I would suggest. And I'm going to copy and paste this into this document. Okay, so you would start by summarizing. You would want to state the situation exactly as it is, just the facts, no judgment, no emotion, no extra details, just like this happened, this happened, this happened. Then after that, you express the impact, the effect the situation is having on you. This is where you say how it's making you feel, the negative impact it's having, ramifications, extra details. I still use non-judgmental language, but you would want to really communicate it. Then you want to ask. Ask for something specific, as simple and as clear of an ask as possible. So it could be something like, can we have a conversation about this? Or it could be something like, stop doing this thing, or give me this thing, or, please don't give that kind of gift again. Then you want to support your ask. Support your ask with reasons or why it will also benefit them. It could be as simple as, I will be happy, or this will help keep our relationship sustainable. This will be good for us. This will make it so this isn't a problem again later. Those are perfectly reasonable things. It doesn't have to be something that just like is good for them too, or pleasurable, or is getting them something they want. It can be simply like, this will make me feel respected, and I really want that from you. Okay, on topic, keep it to just the current situation. Don't bring up other issues. But this also means if someone else, if the person you're talking to starts to bring up, well, you did this thing 10 years ago or whatever, which is common during these kinds of interactions, people will often derail because they're getting defensive. It's reminding them of things, etc. What you want to say to that is, hey, you bring up an important point, and that's an important conversation. I want to give that conversation the space and time it deserves. So let's set that aside for now, because right now we're talking about this other thing. And then you want to negotiate only if they say no. People often ask for what they want and then immediately go to negotiating. They don't give it any time. They don't even get to the person saying no. You only want to negotiate when the person says no. And the whole time you want to stay gentle and calm. Use a gentle tone and gentle language. If you find yourself getting really worked up, if you feel your blood pressure rising, your face getting red, or you feel your blood drawing out of your face and you're getting kind of cold, or any of these sort of like stress responses, if you feel like this is getting out of hand, just say, hey, you know what? I need a break for a little bit. Can we table this for now? And I'm going to go for a little walk. I'm going to go take a shower. I'm going to go do some yoga, whatever. Let's talk about it later today, or let's check back in tomorrow and see if we're ready to talk about it. You don't have to say exactly when you're going to talk about it. This is one of the other things is people will often want, give me the precise time when we're going to finish this conversation. but that's not always possible. Now, it's good whenever possible to give people clear expectations around that because you don't want to leave people hanging. But you can say, I'm not sure when I'm going to be ready for this conversation, but let's check in about it tomorrow in the afternoon. Let's check in, see if we're both feeling okay for the conversation. So that's a good in between. If you're really not sure when you're going to feel ready for talk about something again in general, you don't have to give an exact date of when it's going to happen. You can say, let's check in at this time, on this date, on this day, etc. Because that can say it sets a good expectation, basically. Okay, so let's go back to the scenario. My partner and I have been together for about 5 years. For my birthday last month, she got us tickets to see a live performance of a band we both like. Growing up, she went to a ton of concerts and really loved live music. Me, I can take it or leave it. I enjoy listening to music, but hate crowds and lots of noise. I have severe social anxiety. When she told me about the gift, I didn't know how to respond. I was raised to always receive a gift in the spirit it was given and to be thankful. If you get a weird shirt from your aunt or a schoolmate gets you a book you already own, you don't call them out or complain. Now, my partner knows very well that I dislike crowds, but we go to some events like this or similar a few times a year, and I always, quote, power through because I know it's important to her. But for her to create a situation where I'm obliged to go as a gift to me felt, I don't know, inappropriate, I guess. On top of the situation is the fact that the tickets were very expensive and non refundable. We were on a fixed budget, so when she told me about it, I was both uncomfortable at the expense and unable to speak the truth about it, since to skip the show would mean potentially a lot of wasted money for her. It's long past the time to say anything now, but I wanted to post this to hear feedback and hopefully be better equipped if this ever happens again. So this is tough. One, you have the sort of default consent framework of your culture, the culture of how you're supposed to accept gifts. I'm going to do a quick aside because I have a funny video related to this. It's really short, but I think it's German gifts. Let me see if I can find the guy. No, I gotta find, where is it? In Germany, we don't say is the guy. He like makes these videos all the time. This guy, Liam Karps, and he's got one that's on gift giving specifically. Let me find it real quick. It's a short. Just gonna do gift. Present. Birth. Nope. Give. No. No. I'll have to scroll down probably. But give me 1 second. Oh yeah, they're all just like in Germany. We don't say. I'll have to find the one that's about gift giving. It's very funny, but I'm going to continue talking while I look for it. Basically, you got the default consent framework about. Oh, I think this is it. All right, I think I found it.
In Germany, you don't say, "Oh wow, thank you so much for this present." We say, "Wenn es dir nicht gefällt, kannst du umtauschen. Ich habe den Kassenbon noch."
If you don't like it, you can return it. I still have the receipt. So I'll paste this into the chat because I think this is really relevant, which is that there are genuinely different cultures around gift giving and gift receiving. And these things can conflict. And this can be a thing that leads to a lot of consent incidents. When there are major culturally different expectations around things, the risk is higher, even if you have the same language. Oh, thanks for joining, Whistler. Have a great day. So then what do we do here? So this is tough because the next thing I would say is this person needs to be really careful to make sure they don't start telling themselves a story about what it means that this person did this. I think it's good that they said that it just felt a little silly or bizarre or like unaware. And yeah, Paladin Hulk, in some places, giving the gift receipt is weird and rude. I grew up definitely with this sort of in between culture where it was like on some levels you should have the gift receipt if there's a big problem, but on other levels you just like thanked the person, didn't say anything, regardless of if you hated it or not. And then you were expected to like, you know, show off that you appreciated the gift in some way at a later date. Um, the sort of proverbial like, you wear the ugly sweater or the clothes that don't quite fit or that you don't actually like in front of the person who gave it to you. Harad, you said, yeah, this sounds like the partner loves live concerts and so is projecting their love of live concerts onto the OP and wasn't thinking about the partner at all. See, this is the thing though. I think they have to be careful not to have that thought because I think that's a really not surprising thing to think. I think it's not surprising to me. And I think that that's a really easy thought to go to, that they weren't thinking about me at all, that they're just thinking about their love of live concerts. However, that might not be the case. It could be the case that the OP doesn't really communicate the extent to which they're just powering through, right? Charlie is way less extroverted than me. I am like super, super extroverted all the time, like for the most part. Could always just be down to party, whatever. I love going clubbing every once in a while. I don't love it as much as my friends, some of my friends, but like, I like being around people. I also love staying home and not leaving my house for weeks at a time. Like, I can do both. However, I know Charlie isn't nearly as social as me. And sometimes I'll invite him out or he'll come with me to things. And I feel like we're both having a good time. We'll kind of check in with each other. Everything seems fine. And then later, I understand that he didn't have as much fun as I thought he was having. That I maybe misunderstood, or, he felt like it was really just me and the other people talking and he was just kind of there, and even though the conversations were interesting, he didn't really feel like he was connecting with all the other people, etc., etc. And I think that that's all, it happens, right? And it's not because I don't consider Charlie, it's because sometimes I misunderstand what Charlie is explaining to me. I don't read all the signals correctly, or Charlie is trying to be nice to me and doesn't complain and does not want to say anything because he knows if he tells me that he's having a bad time, I'll be like, all right, well then let's go do something else. Like if there's not a way to repair that, I'm pretty much always down to just leave. And sometimes Charlie's like, no, but also I know this is really good for you. And so this can be it could be this kind of situation. Maybe this person hasn't communicated in a way that has been understood by the other person. It's one thing to tell somebody, hey, I don't like this thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the other person actually fully understands that information. So, this is one of the like communication theory 101 kind of things about miscommunication, because there's multiple different points between like the thought the person has, the words that they choose to use them, they pass through their cultural context, they're interpreted by the other person and then put into the context that that other person has for their own lived experience. And at any point in that chain is potential failure points, right? And so if this person says, oh, I don't really like crowds, however, if I were dating Charlie and Charlie told me that he didn't really like crowds, but we went out swing dancing and I saw him have a great time and we occasionally went to concerts and he said he really liked it, but he says that like, certain situations make him anxious. I might not understand that. I might think, oh, okay. But if there's something it seems as though if there's something to distract, maybe that's okay. So this is a good example of communication could have helped prevent this, and a couple of things. One, if you live on a really tight budget, it's always a good idea to sit down and talk about how much money do we actually feel comfortable spending on each other. Even if you're not living on a tight budget, I actually recommend having that conversation. If Charlie bought me a gift that cost, like $100 or something, I would be like, wow, that's really expensive, but thanks. If Charlie bought me a gift that cost $1,000, I'd be like, whoa, why did you make such a big purchase without talking to me about it? Or especially if we hadn't talked about it, I would just be really stressed out. You know, so that's the first thing that they could do. The second thing is really communicating about what is it we actually enjoy doing. Like Charlie and I just sat down the other day and made an assessment of all the hobbies we've participated in, the ones we're still currently doing, which is not that many, and then ones we're interested in, and we rated them on a scale of 0 to 5 about level of interest and all these other categories like, is this creative, is this athletic, is this social, does this cost a lot of money, does this require any sort of infrastructure, etc. So we could get an idea of, we want to have some things that are creative, some things that are athletic, some things that are social. We have a budget. We want it to be things that we can do at least several times a month, have a couple of hobbies that we can do every day, etc. But we really sat down and talked about this. Now, Charlie and I are huge nerds, so we like literally made a spreadsheet and everything, but you can always tell like who either is or has been Polly because the spreadsheets and the documents come out. Anyway, so talking about this, clearly this person didn't get it enough, right? There are lots of ways that this could have gone. It could be what you're thinking, Aradin, which is that they were just thinking about how much they love the concert. Or it could be that this person misunderstands and thinks, when my partner enjoys something enough, it seems to be that their social anxiety doesn't affect them as much. And it's a band that we both really like. And, and enjoy listening to music together, etc. The other thing is having a way for people to say no is really good consent practice, which includes with gifts. If you don't already know that somebody's going to want something, generally speaking, spending a ton of money on something that's not refundable is a bad idea. It's those car commercials that show the person like waking up on Christmas morning to a new car are genuinely absurd. Don't do that to somebody. That's a huge purchase. You should talk about that first. Even if you brought the car back, you wouldn't get all your money back because it loses value the second you drive it off the lot. Like, there's a lot going on there. All right. So you said something about it, and maybe I'm just being cynical. The pandemic has made me cynical, but this reads to me as the partner is using the OP's birthday as an excuse to buy something really expensive that they themselves really want to go to, but didn't feel they could justify the expense for them to just want to go. See, I can understand that interpretation, but I think that we don't have any of that information. And this is also one of those things to think about when it comes to moving through conflict and repair relationships. You can't do that if you go into a situation assuming the worst in somebody. Even if you think, oh, this is the best possible reading I could think of, it's still probably not. If I go in and already think this person is an asshole going into the situation, I'm going to have a hard time focusing on maintaining that relationship because I'm going to just be like, no, why would I tolerate this thing? Now, it's okay if you want to, for example, prioritize maintaining self-respect. But as much as possible, you want to make that decision when you have as much of the information as possible. And you also, it's going to be hard to listen for understanding if we've already written people off. If we've already decided, I can read this person's mind and I know why they did this thing. We can't ever know why somebody did that something unless they give us an accurate report. Unless they give us an open and honest report of why they did something with insight into themselves, which can be elusive. A lot of people themselves don't even know why they've done something. we're not going to get that information, and we're not going to be able to listen for understanding. We're going to be listening to hear what it is we already believe if we go into these situations. And so this is something related to one of the things I'm going to talk about on the Tuesday stream about friendship is the power of having what's called unconditional positive regard, which means that as much as possible, whenever possible, you go into any interpersonal situation and you assume the best in people. Even when you know someone's being an asshole, even when you know somebody can do better, even when someone's done something wrong, we never forget the person's humanity, the person's dignity, the person's right to make mistakes, to grow from things. We always assume the best, and even when we get information otherwise that's very clear, like even if this person said, yeah, I totally bought this because I really wanted to go it and I thought you would enjoy it too, you know, if this person really just wanted to go and they weren't, there's plenty of other ways they can do that. If the person was selfish in that way, it would probably be a pattern of things, right? We would need at least 3 incidents of the same kind of thing for it to be a pattern. But if this person were just baseline incredibly selfish like that, there probably would be a pattern, right? It wouldn't be this really like surprising thing. Hello, Psycho Twitch. I don't see you in the chat, but I see you in the overlay. Weird. Okay. So this is one of those things where there are lots of different reasons why this could have happened. We can't reach into the mind of the person who bought the tickets to know, and we should not assume that our instinct about it is correct, regardless of what our instinct is. My instinct is this person probably just thought it was a nice gift. They bought it, they got excited. Even just thinking about ADHD, I can sometimes get excited about something to the point that I don't think to slow down to check in about things first. I can be very impulsive about certain types of things. I've worked to put guardrails on my life, but it doesn't always work. Paladin Hulk, you said not selfish, self-centered. It's an important difference, IMO. I definitely agree it's an important difference. And the difference between selfish and self-centered, yeah. And people can be, I don't like to say that someone is self-centered or is selfish because nobody is any of these things like 24/7. Someone might do selfish or self-centered things a lot, but I generally like to think of it as like an act is selfish or self-centered, but at the very least, and we can't again know why this person did this thing, but at the very least we can think the act was not appropriate. The act was done either not having all the relevant information or not weighting the information that they had appropriately. At the very least, those are the only things that we can actually say without potentially prejudging the situation, right? It's, I would say, either this person didn't have all the information that they needed to make the decision, the right decision, or they had all the information but didn't have the correct weighting and or importance of it. So this is if you want to move through this kind of situation and maintain the relationship to have the happiest, most supportive, and most sustainable relationship possible, you've got to go in with positive regard for your partner, wanting to listen for understanding, but also maintaining your self-respect and being able to set boundaries. But these things do not have to exist in tension. So what I would actually advise here is use that seasons tool to sit down and talk, ask for information. Why did you buy these tickets? We've talked about how I don't really like crowds. So if I would actually coming to this, I would say, so you got me these tickets for my birthday. They cost this amount of money, and it's for this band that we both really like. And I'm really thankful that you got me a birthday present. However, I really don't like crowds. And so the idea of going to a big concert makes me feel really stressed. I know we've talked about this before, but I really just want to stress or I want to emphasize the fact that generally speaking, going to concerts is not something I enjoy. I mostly do it for you because I really don't like being in crowded spaces. So I want to ask two things. Can we talk about where our the communication broke down? And two, is there a way that we could say resell these tickets online or something? Because I really don't want to go to this concert. The idea is making me stressed. I would love it if we could resell these tickets and then use the money to buy something else together that we would both enjoy because it'll make me feel better for my birthday. I will be happier with the birthday present. um, and if the person starts saying, like, oh my goodness, blah, 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 just say, like, yeah, let's just keep it on this topic. If they say, all right, no, there's no way I can get a refund for these tickets, so we can't resell them, blah, 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 I would say, okay, well, then let's maybe pick somebody else for you to go with because I really don't want to go. That would be a way of maintaining your boundaries, but still having the opportunity to work through it. You can still say, I really appreciate that you wanted to give me a gift, and I'm really not comfortable with going to this, and definitely not for my birthday. Like those two things feel contradictory to me. So you would want to use a gentle tone and use gentle language, but positive regard, listening for understanding. We really want to talk about two other essential tools. Two other essential tools. Unconditional positive regard and listening for understanding. These are invaluable tools to move through conflict. Shit goes wrong. In every relationship, things are going to go wrong. You've got to be able to move through conflict. If you want to maintain those relationships, if you don't want to lose, every partner and your friends over time to conflict, because things go wrong. It's inevitable. Sometimes not very many things go wrong. Sometimes the things that go wrong are very small and we get really lucky. But if you want to have the best chance of moving through conflict, especially if it's more impactful, you really need to start with positive regard and listening for understanding. Listening for understanding is difficult because it means that I need to let go of trying to predict what I think the person is going to say. It means I need to let go of trying to predict why somebody did something. I need to let go of thinking I know something about this person's character as a result of what I assume are their reasons for doing something. And it means I need to really understand how the person is thinking, where they were coming from with this action before I respond as much as possible. Yeah, Rodden, most of us are bad at this. I have been teaching these skills for a I started teaching them when I was a kid. So at least 20 years at this point. I started teaching them when I was really little. Because remember, I was a big nerd and I would buy used psych textbooks and then teach people the stuff from it. But yeah, I've studied these things and been practicing them every day since I was a little kid and teaching them to people as well. And I can still be real shit at these things. If somebody makes me feel a little off in the wrong ways, the more I interact with them, the more I'm immediately going to bristle at anything they say to me. If they try to give me really good feedback or even just try to be nice to me, I'm going to be irritated with it. I know this about myself. So because I've worked to get some good self-insight, which was not easy. It took a lot of time. There were things that I thought I knew and then I had to reassess later. I'm able to set guardrails in my life. I'm able to use metacognition, just like thinking about thinking, So I can say, okay, I know how my future self is likely to feel. If I've got somebody who's like irritated me a few times recently, my number one trick these days, the thing I've been really enjoying to use is maybe I'm going to text them back or send them an email in return. And I know I sound a bit pissed or a bit irritated. I throw that sucker into ChatGPT and I say, hey, can you rewrite this to be less irritated and a little bit more polite? And it does a pretty good job. And just by rereading the thing that I wrote to that person, it's with ChatGPT's interpretation of it, I feel a little bit better. What I used to do beforehand was imagine I'm talking to my grandmother. I love her. No matter what she does, no matter what, like my family can get irritated with her sometimes. To me, she can just do no wrong. I'm like endlessly, like just endless love for my grandmother. I think she's perfect. Absolute riot of a person, funny, insightful, witty. And so whenever I was like getting snippy with people, what I would do is just say, I'm going to imagine I'm talking to my grandmother. Imagine that she's the person saying these things. How would I respond to her? That was really useful for me as my early tool. I still use that, but these days ChatGPT is faster. But I'm still working on that inside of myself. Arati said, that is another person not showing up in Twitch chat, and both have had the same icon to their name, which isn't the CA icon, which I'm guessing means they're coming from a different source or location. Yeah. Um, and then Arati and I was going to check out ChatGPT, but apparently you need an active phone number to access it. Yeah, I don't remember how I signed up for it, but I signed up before it was like officially released commercially. I did like the trial. I don't know if I had to put a phone number in, but probably I did. Anyway, ChatGPT is really helpful. You can use the Bing one when it's fully released. There's other chatbots and large language models that can help you with that. Um, but yeah, that's what I recommend. You really want to have positive regard for people. I do my best with this one. This one's hard for me. Listening for understanding is not nearly as hard because I've had many years of working one on one with clients where, like, they will say things that I find truly horrifying. But because I want to do my job well, I listen and try to really understand them and where they're coming from and work with where they're at. However, the unconditional positive regard is hard because there are some people that I like just genuinely don't like and like find every interaction with them unpleasant and stressful. And I could get into spaces where I just think somebody's an asshole or a bitch or like an idiot. And whenever I catch myself having those thoughts, I just say, you know what? No, they're just different than me. I don't agree with the things they do. Maybe I find some of the stuff that they do unethical, but there's no such thing as a bad person. There's no such thing as a good person. There's only people, and we all do good and bad things. And most of the things we do are neither good nor bad, they're completely gray. And so that is something I really believe. I know I believe that, but my thinking self and my emotional self are not always in agreement with each other. So, really sticking with that is a great way to move through conflict. It's a really great way to be able to get yourself to listen for understanding, which is if I catch myself thinking trash about another person, especially about who they are rather than what they do. That's one of these important distinctions. If you start thinking that someone is something, that's a big red flag. That should be a big, like light bulb moment for you of like, oh, my first step is to try to switch to thinking about something they did rather than something they are. So I'm going to write that down as well. One trick if you catch yourself thinking someone is something, like they are an asshole or they are so stupid, etc. Try to start switching it to be about what they did rather than what they are. For example, that thing nope, not tithing. That thing they did was so rude and frustrating. Rather than they are an asshole, that thing they did was rude and frustrating. A great example of this is when people are driving. I see it all the time. Somebody doesn't merge quite right. Somebody doesn't immediately go. The light turns green. I've been in so many people's cars where they're like, look at this idiot, or this person's an asshole, or like, this person shouldn't have their license. There are a million and one things that could be going on with it. I mean, this is one of the many reasons why I think we shouldn't have cars, because there are a million things that can go on that can make someone's driving worse. But it could be that, they just got a phone call that told them some really big tragedy. Rodden, it's tough because, like, I have a lot of empathy for people as individuals. I can look at Trump as a person and be like, that person has a ton of trauma. That person has a ton of trauma that they've never processed, will never process. Every minute of that person's life is a constant anxious struggle for being good, being right, being the best, being whatever. They're never going to feel at peace and settled in themselves. However, empathy and sympathy for someone as an individual is not the same for empathy and sympathy for someone as a symbol, especially in a position of power and authority. Trump, the individual, I can have tons of sympathy for him. I can be like, damn, his life probably sucks. He's been really hurt, and he's hurt a lot of people as a result. And I wish healing for him. Trump, as the former president, fuck that guy. So I can hold both of those at the same time. It's the same with, like, the royals. Like, yeah, sure, I can feel heartbreak for them as individuals and all of their struggles, but them as their position, they're just a bunch of fucking rich assholes that benefited from colonialism. I don't care. I don't care. As an individual, sure. Yeah, one on one, I can be like, yeah, your life has sucked. These things have not been fair. You were born into this and you didn't ask for it. You can also walk away. You can walk away on many different levels. Anyway, digression aside. So, we're talking about interacting with people as individuals. All right, so let's go ahead and look at what some people said in the comments. Okay, so they did already go to the concert. This is more of a post-mortem exercise. This person says, I'm reading the show already happened, so I'm assuming you ended up going. If that's the case, then maybe next time you guys are talking about music or the concert, you can mention something like, I really enjoyed that band. However, honestly, I was not a fan of the crowds. I don't think I'd want to go to another concert. It will show that you still appreciate you got to see the band, but it's also clear that you don't want to go to another concert in the future. I would say that this is excellent because you want to always validate. You want to always, acknowledge the other person's efforts and their humanity in these different ways. Because even when it's hard, and it's this person here says the comment above is what I was going to suggest. I've been with my partner over 12 years, and honestly, it's communication that's kept us together. I want the dishes done, I say so. For his birthday, I deal with getting game stuff instead of anything real, though I finally found something he'd loved that's physical for Valentine's, so there's that. To stave off possible comments, it was a stitched up bunny that was cute but kind of fit the horror genre too, which is so perfect. He's actually been actively keeping the cats away from it. But I don't ever expect your partner to read your mind. Exactly. That's the thing. Even if this person has communicated it to their partner before, it's clearly not fully clear to this person to the extent to which this matters. Or if it is, then this the OP has in if it really is clear to their like say it is the worst possible reading, the partner is, fully aware of the impact of this, they just really wanted to go. I would be surprised because if the person was actually willing to be that selfish in a situation, willing to act that way, I feel like they just would have bought themselves the tickets. I have a hard time imagining that somebody would be willing to act so selfishly intentionally and not just be the kind of person who would just say, oh, I bought these tickets for myself. In fact, I think if they really understood and they wanted to be selfish, they would just say, well, I didn't buy you one because I know that you hate going into crowded places. And this is having known people who behaved pretty regularly in selfish ways. That would often be much more their MO. It would be a lot more of using the things I've shared about myself against me to justify their selfish behavior rather than trying to rope me into doing something like them spending more money to get, you know what I'm saying? Like that to me feels a little incongruous. But if they really were going to act that selfishly and like knowingly do that, then the OP has asymmetric information that they need. And the only way to move through this is to communicate. Um, yeah, Helen Hulk. Yeah, this person didn't seem like they're very clear about their feelings. If it was me, I would mention my dislike of crowds nonstop. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like there's some people pleasing, and this is not to, victim blame. I'm not trying to say, like, oh, it's this guy's fault. 100%. What I'm saying is that there's been miscommunication here. Communication broke down in any one of those places where communication can break down. And so it really needs to be reworked until there is no ambiguity anymore, until everything is really clear about this. The other thing that can be a conversation to have here, which is less fun, even, but likely one that is important long term. And this is a little controversial, I know, but just bear with me. Whenever possible, anytime any of us are dealing with any sort of mental health issue, whether it's acute or ongoing, it is really important for us to, in general, try not to just let that situation fester, right? I'll give you an example. I've had clinical depression basically my entire life. I've had endless amounts of therapy. I've had genuinely cutting edge world class therapies. Like, I did this really intensive program as a teenager that was part of Harvard University's like specialist teens whose brains are all fucked up program. And it genuinely saved my life and put me on a really good life path. I've had therapy almost nonstop since I was about 9 years old. Good therapy, too, like genuinely good therapy. I've benefited tremendously. I have also been on antidepressants almost nonstop since I was about 14. I will take breaks on occasion, either because I forget to refill my meds because I have ADHD, or because, like when I moved to Japan, it was hard to get those meds. So I just kind of like did 3 years, 5 years of literally no medications for any of my health problems and just kind of tried to like deal. And that period of time did benefit me in some ways. It sucked ass. I mean, like it was genuinely shit. My ADHD just like ran havoc through my life, but I learned a lot of important skills. It would have been better to do that with a therapist. It's also hard to get therapy in Japan, and most psychotherapy in Japan is not really comparable to the way we would think about therapy in the West. It's a little bit different. You can find sort of more Western style, clinically trained therapists. However, they're not usually covered by insurance. It's like $200 a session, etc. So I didn't, but I had that period of time. But the point I'm trying to get to is If I just said, I have depression and that's that, there's some degree to which I do need to do that. Like, if I constantly am in denial, or if I constantly am telling myself, oh, you would just stop having depression if you only did X, Y, and Z, that would be shit and it would actually make my mental health worse. But if I also just said, I have depression and that means that X, Y, and Z things are just, how do I want to say this? Because I'm not trying to say that you can like just get better. That's not at all what I'm saying. Mental health issues are not problems to be solved. They are difficulties to be managed. This is another idea I want to really communicate because this is relevant to this whole situation here that we're talking about, which is that there are three main types of issues. Let's just say issues. There are problems. I'm going to put a one. I'm going to put a one. One. Problems to be solved. These are reserved for things that have an actual solution. The next is difficulties. Nope, that's not difficult. Difficulties to be managed. Things that cannot be solved and likely can't be completely done away with, but can have their impact offset to different degrees. And then there are challenges to be met. And these are lifelong, never-ending issues that we will face but must be interacted with, such as systemic racism, sexism, homophobia. That's not how you spell homophobia. Homophobia, etc., etc. These are not things that we can solve. Difficulties wrong is an example of number one. Spelling difficulties wrong. Yes, thank you. So a mental health issue is not a problem to be solved, generally speaking. Sometimes in like really acute short-term things, sure. But for the most part, I would say even those are always difficulties to be managed. However, this is where the sometimes the online discourse gets really lost and people get real ready to like cancel each other and like take real bad faith readings of each other. And also a lot of ableism crops up. So I have depression and I've done everything I can possibly do to get over it. And I think that I'm never going to know why. It does not just go away. And I could just choose to be like, all right, that's it. I'm just going to be depressed for the rest of my life and like allow that difficulty to just kind of like envelop me. Or I can say, I have this difficulty that's been set before me. It sucks ass. It means I have fewer spoons. It means that there are going to be things I won't be able to do that I want to do. It means that my timeline on things is going to be slower than a lot of other people's. I'm not going to think about it like a superpower. I'm not going to just become not depressed someday. There's no magic pill or accommodation that's going to change these things, but I need to manage it, which means that I have to be really careful of the behaviors that I know will make me slip even more into a depressive episode. Like I need to get regular exercise. I need to go outside at least once a week. I need to get decent sleep and keep my sleep routine and sleep hygiene really good. I need to make sure I'm drinking enough water. I need to move my body to some degree. Not all of these things work for everybody. This is not me prescribing anything to anyone. This is me just saying what I do for myself. I need to make sure that I don't just, like wake up, not shower, stay in my pajamas, put Netflix on this screen and a video game on this screen, and then just sit in a little hunch with like my shades down, eating junk food all day until Charlie goes home or comes home, right? I can do that every once in a while. And every once in a while, it's very pleasurable and satisfying. But if I do that too much, it's going to be real bad. So then one of the other things that needs to happen is it doesn't sound like they've had a real discussion about the extent to which this person's social anxiety impacts them, nor have they had a discussion about how they want to manage that. One of the things that happens a lot is people then, when they do try to have these conversations, start to treat a mental health issue as though it's a problem to be solved rather than a difficulty to be managed. Sometimes people stop having mental health issues. Sometimes you get on the right type of treatment or you get good therapy and things can abate. But a lot of the time they don't. A lot of the time, these are things that are going to need to be managed for the rest of a person's life. I have really bad ADHD. There are things that are limits that I will never be able to overcome, as people say. I will always, no matter how hard I try, need to actively engage all of my effort to listen to people and to pay attention, especially when I'm bored. And I will always, and how, but what I manage, one of my management things is whenever I realize I stopped paying attention and I missed something someone said, I don't just try to bullshit my way through it. I just say, hey, sorry, I stopped paying attention. Can you repeat that? I tell that to Charlie like 20 times a day, minimum. Because my mind will just leave. Charlie will say something to me, and then suddenly it's like galaxy brain. I'm all over the place. So, this is one way I manage it with Charlie. If I were in a situation, say, with like a boss, and it wouldn't really be appropriate for me to say that, I say to them, hey, you just asked me this question, but I want to make sure that I like fully understand everything that you just said before I answer your question. Can you give me the information you just gave over the last like minute or so, but can you rephrase it a little bit before I answer the question? Sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes it's like, what time are you getting here? And I'm just like, And otherwise, I might just say, like, hey, can you say that again? I don't think I heard you correctly. That can be enough. You know, that's the way I manage it, right? Managing it doesn't have to mean I just no longer have the problem. I manage it by being honest with myself and honest in ways that are appropriate with other people and working to offset the negative impact, right? And it does not, however, if I was trying to have a conversation with somebody, and I've dated people who treated my ADHD like a problem to be solved, who basically just thought on some level, consciously or not, if I simply tried hard enough, I just wouldn't have it. Oh, Corvid Eye, thank you so much for the follow. They acted as though I would just not have ADHD anymore. But my ADHD isn't a problem to be solved. It's a difficulty to be managed. My depression, not a problem to be solved. I've tried. Trust me. You can bet your butt I have signed up to be considered in clinical trials for all of these nice alternative therapies, whether it's the ketamine or the LSD or whatever, because I'm like, gosh, I would love to just not have to constantly be managing my depression to keep the worst effects of it at bay. Because it's exhausting. And it means, again, that I have way fewer spoons because I have to make sure every day I go on my stupid little mental health walk and like brush my teeth and like eat food and sleep and drink water and shower and like put real clothes on. And like, that sucks because those things are also hard because I have ADHD, right? These things are really intertwined, but I need to manage it. So in this situation, it doesn't sound like they ever had a conversation really about the extent to which this social anxiety impacts him, nor have they had a real frank conversation about how are we going to manage this situation? Because it shouldn't be that he just powers through. This is one of the other things that to me is an indicator. The fact that he feels that he has to just power through his social anxiety means that there's some structures that need to be in place. We should have ways to make it through. If I was, say, I was in a relationship with someone who had really severe social anxiety, but they also wanted to like accompany me to parties and to events, they didn't want me to like not go to things because of them, et cetera, all perfectly reasonable. We would want to talk about it. So, what some of the things we could do to manage it is what can we do in the days up leading up to the social event to make sure you've got more energy for that. If we need to like spend the night or two beforehand just binge watching Netflix and playing our Nintendo Switches, that's what we're going to do. If I really want to go to this party and I want you there with me, we'd want to talk about which events am I going to go to by myself and which ones are we going to go to together. We'd want to have a system probably for how are we going to check in with each other? How do you want to communicate to me when you're feeling overwhelmed? Do we want to take breaks during social events to like go outside? Do you know, I've had times where I've gone to parties because I wanted to do the whole, if you're not aware of this, we talk about it a lot on Tuesdays, the mirror exposure effect, which is the fact that people tend to have more positive thoughts and feelings about things and people they see more often. So it can be really helpful for making friends and maintaining relationships. If you're not even feeling it, just go to that party for 15 minutes, check in, say hello to people, and then get out of there. But I've also gone, checked in, said hello to people, and been like, hey, you know what? I'm super jazzed to be here for the vibe. I'm going to go sit in the corner with my book. I've even had like a little piece of cardboard I brought and I like put in my lap that says, I'm here for the vibe, but I want to read. People think I'm weird, but you know, I'm an eccentric, whatever. How am I going to manage this social anxiety? That's one of those things that needs to happen too. If we want to move through conflicts, we have to be able to differentiate what in this situation is a problem to be solved, what's a difficulty to be managed, and what's a challenge to be met. So here, if they hadn't already gone to the concert, it would have been the problem to be solved is what are we going to do with these concert tickets? The difficulty to be managed is the social anxiety and, you know, the particular ways it impacts this relationship and maybe their communication dynamics, right? Like maybe that's a problem to be solved to a certain extent, maybe it's a difficulty to be managed. And the challenge is the inevitability of human misunderstanding. We're never going to get away with just that's never going away. It's always possible for us to misunderstand each other. How are we going to manage the effects of that? How are we going to meet the challenges that that presents? Paladin Hunky said, people will think we're weird regardless, might as well live authentically. Yeah, for sure. Rodden, or maybe you'll get caught up in a discussion you were enjoying and end up staying longer than you thought. Exactly. So, you know, there's no one size fits all solution to any of these things. And I think that there's a lot that we can talk about even in this one situation. But let's do one more real quick before we go. This one's a little too complicated. This is fascinating. You can, on Today I Fucked Up, vote on the best ones for the month. And I didn't know that. And this is really interesting. The top ones here are Today I Fucked Up by being intimate with a medium, telling my dad I have never had sex, by getting tested to donate a kidney to my wife, expecting a sex worker to keep what happened between us private, by pointing out to my wife that the naked boobs in the show we were watching were not the actress's actual boobs because there was a difference in the freckles and the cleavage, then rewound it to prove it. Okay, I'm gonna just vote for 5 right now. Yeah, I'm just voting for 5. No, I meant to vote for post 5. I hope I voted for the right one. I don't know. Post 5. Because this is, yeah, pretty funny. That's a pretty funny mistake to make. I'm not going to click on the not safe for work. I think that the title is pretty self-explanatory. And this person's top comic, you better not forget any birthdays or anniversaries, etc. For sure. And Yeah, kind of did this one to himself. Yep, exactly. This is it. Not just that, OP has to notice every new thing she wears, does, puts on. New haircut, you better compliment her. New dress, looks great. New lipstick, gorgeous. The moment he slips, it'll be, oh, so you noticed someone else's boobs, but on my hair. RIP. I mean, like, obviously there are ways you could actually work through this. Um, obviously there are things that you can actually do. Uh, Yeah, I mean, this one is like thought the actress was full of freckles, but it's literally two slightly darker than skin color dots. He'll have to go memento on every detail of his wife's appearance. Um, I mean, like, when I see boobs on screen, I am also at full attention most of the time. Uh, but this is the rewinding to prove it. I get the like I can't help myself to make commentary about like little things I notice. I will often like pause things to annotate. Oh, thank you, Crit Rich, for the resubscription for 8 months. That's so lovely. Um, but this one's so sad. Poor dude. Why'd you do that? The ways you could work through it is talk about how it's making you feel. Apologize. 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 Yeah, exactly, Aradin. Depending on the person, it could be that the wife might find that very interesting. I get the sense this isn't the case here. Yeah, apologize. That's the first thing. Always apologize. You want to give a good apology, which is, stating exactly why what you did was wrong, stating what you did that was wrong, saying the words, I am sorry, not I'm sorry if, not I apologize for. No, you really want to say I am sorry. If you need to continue, I am sorry that I did A, B, and C. It was inappropriate of me. It was inappropriate of me because, you know, I paid way too much attention to this woman's boobs, and that's weird. And also, like, I don't put in that much attention for other things, like, that are more important to me. And then you want to say, what am I going to do better in the future? In the future, I will refrain from like hyper fixating on ladies' boobs in TV shows, and definitely will refrain from telling you about it and being weird and rewinding things. And also, I'll make sure to invest more energy in paying attention to the small details about things I actually care about. That would be a perfectly reasonable apology. You're not owed forgiveness, however. That's an important thing to remember. You're never owed forgiveness, but that would be a good place to start. And then also, this guy never forget a birthday and anniversary or anything for serious because, yeah. I mean, like, I don't actually, okay. The thing is, though, really holding shit against people forever is generally speaking bad form, not very sustainable for a relationship of any kind. Giving people shit in a fun and playful way forever, on the other hand, is just my family. And it's just uh, one of the more charming things about my family, I think, is just like the ways in which we can tease each other and give each other crap. I always get annoyed though when my dad embellishes too much. He loves to like, I don't know, he's got the gift of gab basically. He can like really tell a tale, but sometimes he will embellish things, add color and flavor a little bit too much to the point where I'm like, you're just talking about someone that's not me. I would never do those things. But for the most part, there's plenty of things he can genuinely make fun of me for, and vice versa. And we love to tell a tale to other people, and it's fun, but we have that relationship, right? Holding shit over people for the rest of their life, less less good, less sustainable, right? If it is part of your sense of maintaining self-respect, you can make that decision, but you got to realize it's often coming at the price of maintaining the relationship. It's just a fact. Rodney said, any real apology includes an indication that the behavior will change in the future, for sure. So yeah, I'm going to put that under also the essential, not two, but I'm just going to say other essential tools, listening for understanding, uh, good apologies. If you, thank you, autocorrect. If you don't think you can make a good apology, or you want to learn how to be better at them, we do have a class on how to make a good apology. So let's wrap up here. I had like 10 other things open. I had this by not dating someone and becoming an evil character in a book. Missed all the signs that my roommate was interested in me, by destroying me and my daughter's relationship because I didn't believe her. I didn't actually read that one, but it seemed interesting, by going on a date with a therapist, by not checking which text thread I was in before responding, by getting my mother in law high on edibles, insulting my wife's intelligence, etc. Those were the other ones I had open that we didn't get to today. But these are all pretty good, pretty funny, or stressful, or complicated. So I invite you to join in the conversation on those, talk about consent, etc. And just as an update, we've got some really good classes coming up. If you've never checked it out, please check out our website. We have lots of really great things on there, and we're hoping to add more and more soon. We have a newsletter that you can join, but also upcoming classes. Yeah, I don't know that dating a therapist is a problem as long as they aren't your therapist. Well, maybe let's read the situation. We have our accountability series going on. Even if you missed the accountability processes 101 class, you can still come to our accountability pods class, which will teach you about how to be part of a pod, how to set up a pod, what pods do and shouldn't do, and all kinds of other great things. And we've got our accountability processes 102 class coming up. We just had this class yesterday and it went really well, and this is going on right now. But on the 7th, we have Consent Basics, which is always free. On March 8th, we have a class on trauma-informed practices. It's part of our Consent and Leadership series, but you don't have to be in a position of leadership to join it. And then we've got our BIPOC discussion group. We've got a guide on how to respond to consent incidents with the theme of the idea that harm creates responsibility. We've got consent basics coming up again on the 16th, our men's discussion group on the 19th. We've got a really fun class on the 21st, Intro to Consensual Kink, and even more things, including on the 28th, helping kids navigate sexuality online. It's really important to know that the average age of first exposure to pornography is about 8 years old. Most pornography these days is quite hardcore. You want to talk to your kids about what porn is and what to do if they encounter it before they encounter it, because a lot of the time it's not a very consensual situation. It's incredibly stressful. It can be traumatizing for them. So I really recommend taking this class as well. This is an outside guest educator. I'm really excited for this class. It's not just about pornography, of course. It's basically, how do we keep kids safe on the internet? How do we make sure that kids, know how to navigate things that they're exposed to on the internet, etc. We've also got an Australian friendly time for Consent Basics on the 22nd. So it'll be morning here in Europe. I'll be teaching that. So we've got a lot of things coming up. Again, our Consent Basics and our discussion groups are always free, so check those out. Yes, next time on Consent Academy, please check out our social media profiles. We're on pretty much everything. And if you enjoy this and want to consider continuing to support free consent education, please considering supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to lots of exclusive content and early access to things, discounts on classes, stickers, and more. Even $3 a month really, really helps us and gets you access to our Discord, etc. So check those things out. And I will be back on Tuesday. We'll be talking more about positive regard, friendship processes, etc. It's a great topic. I'm really excited for Tuesday. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm going to share, uh, let's just say this. I'm going to share, anyone with a link can view. I'm going to copy this link so you all can get this. Oops. Nope, I don't need that. Clicked on the wrong thing. You can all get access to the document I made today. So if you want to review anything we talked about and whatnot, please feel free to check it out. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you on Tuesday. Bye.